How are you feeling today? Okay, fantastic. We're going to be doing a little bit of active learning, so if you want to retain what you learn here today and apply it in your own life, I highly recommend you get involved. Can you do that? Say yes? Yes! Fantastic, then we're off to a good start. Who here is familiar with the law of attraction, secret? Most of the people in the room, it is the Bali Spirit Festival after all, I would expect as much. Who here watched The Secret, was frustrated because the secret to the secret still felt like a secret? Anybody? You knew there was a secret, but how to make the secret work was still a secret? That was definitely my experience. So normally I deliver this workshop in either 4 hours or 8 hours, and they've given me 1 hour. So this is more like a highlight reel. I'm going to include as much as I can and do as much of the interactive sections as possible, but if I'm speaking kind of fast, that is the reason. We can overrun a little bit into lunch, but my goal is to be able to deliver this within 1 hour. Does that sound good? Yeah. Fantastic. Number 3 is to give you new tools and techniques. And I would also add a 4th one there, which is to show you that you are programmable. It's very important that you know that you are programmable, because that is how you become aware that you have been programmed mostly, let's say, on default settings most of your life. And what I want to show you is how to take that back into your conscious awareness, back into your control. So active versus passive learning. If you just sit there with, slouching or leaning and kind of paying attention, you might retain 5%, 10% of what you learned today. If you write it down, you'll retain about 50 to 55%, but if you actively engage, call back, talk to each other, stand up, use your body, you retain up to 90%. So that's really what I would like for you today. Does that sound good? Say yes? Yes. Okay, look at someone next to you and tell them that you are committed to taking part full out. Go. I am committed to taking part full out. All right, where everybody's accountability buddy here. Fantastic. So number 1 is your consciousness is a creative force. The mere act of observing is not passive. Observation is not passive. It's active. I'll give you an example. Who here has felt like somebody was staring at them, and then you turn around and you notice that someone is actually staring at you? Yes? A lot of people. How is that possible? How can you feel somebody's gaze? That's because the eyes don't just receive light, they project energy as well. And once you understand that, you see that what you observe will persist in your reality. And what you choose to neglect will slowly slip away. And that's true of relationships. It's also true of that boxy little apartment that you no longer want to live in. If you keep focusing on it and keep telling yourself how stuck you feel, you continue to observe it, you continue to manifest it into your future. Does that make sense? Fantastic. That means that your gaze, your sight, your ability to observe something literally affects the physical matter around you. And when you think that all of the world around you is built up of atoms, and you can influence all of these atoms just by looking at them differently, you start to see how when you're in a relationship and you observe the person that you're with through love, then they start to radiate with the love you observe them with, and things grow more beautiful in your eyes. If you have trained yourself, actually you don't need to train yourself to be negative, because humans are naturally negative in the way that our observation works. Why? Because it was essential to our survival some 100,000 years ago. So because we are so sensitive to danger and harm and things that can hurt us and scare us, we managed to stay alive, and that was very important. However, these days, it is now to our detriment, and we're going to get more into evolutionary psychology a little bit later. But what I want to get to is manifesting your reality be like Netflix. And what that means is, you know when you watch a couple of shows on Netflix? First of all, who here watches Netflix? Pretty much everybody. Okay, do you know how the electrical impulse goes into your laptop, gets split into an RGB value, goes into the little pixels in the screen, and when you zoom out far enough, you see the full picture? Do you need to know all of that in order to enjoy Netflix? No, you just need to know how to change channels, turn up and down the volume. So your manifestation works kind of like that. All of the channels are being broadcast at once, but what you tune into is what you watch. And you can typically only watch one channel at a time. But, like Netflix, your subconscious mind starts to learn your preferences. So you're watching Netflix, and then it says, because you watched your relationship crumble, you might also enjoy feeling like a total failure. So just by watching and observing those thoughts in your mind, you start to attract other thoughts that are equal to it. And that is the law of attraction at play. It's not some mystical thing, it's some very biological thing. Just like people who like the same music like to hang out together. You are attracted to each other because you have common ground. Similarly, people who've been through the same kind of heartache, oh, you had your heart broken, I had my heart broken too, let's be friends. We find that common ground. Because you watched childhood abandonment, you might also enjoy getting rejected. So who here has watched a bad movie? Raise your hands. Pretty much everybody. Would you then take that movie, put it back into the DVD player and watch it again? What about again and again and again and again? How about go to the scene that you hate the most and watch it frame by frame on slow motion? Yet that's what we do with our imaginations all of the time. We continually play the worst case scenario, meanwhile feeling as if it's already happening. That's why horror movies are so successful, because when you go to the cinema, people who are numb in their everyday lives, who can't feel because they're living a job that they barely tolerate, and they're answering to somebody they don't respect, and they're buying stuff they don't need, those people go and watch a horror movie. Why? Because it makes them feel alive. Because they get to feel the same pain and anguish that the person in the screen does, and even though it's unpleasant, it's still a feeling and they feel alive. And that is also why the news is so powerful and also potentially so harmful. Because when you wake up and you prime your brain with all of these negative imagery and all of these sensationalized graphics about people suffering, you feel that suffering. And therefore you start to manifest more of that feeling. Because somebody who just thinks positively is not nearly as powerful as somebody who feels positive. So you can go on positive thinking all you like, but unless you feel that positivity, you're not manifesting. What kind of words do you talk to yourself with? When you speak, it literally is carrying your vibration through your vocal cords, through the cells of your body, and out to the world around you. So you are programming your cells with your words, not because of the words themselves, but because of the phonetic sounds of the words. And that is why spelling words is known as spelling, because you are casting a spell. I'm going to give you an example. I want everybody to read this paragraph out loud. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I'll tell you about the job I undertake. I begin Monday morning. I work through my weekdays to earn the living, to pay my mortgage, and then we all celebrate our weekend together. Yay! What's wrong with that paragraph? Boring. Beyond that? Depressing. Beyond that?
Very mundane and simplistic words.
Very mundane, simplistic. Actually, it's not simplistic words, and I'll get to that in a second. Anything else? Does anything strike you about this paragraph?
It's repetitive. You do the same thing again and again.
Right. This is a perfect example of programming hiding in plain sight. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Are you ready? Ready to have the veil pulled away? We're going to repeat the same paragraph. And this time, we're changing the spelling. 1, 2, 3, go.
I'll tell you about the job I undertake. I begin Monday morning. I work through my weekdays to earn the living, to pay my mortgage, and then we'll all celebrate our weekend together.
Chilling. What changed? The spelling of the words, but you notice how morning sounds a lot like mourning. How earn your living sounds like an earn. And why is it called an undertaking? Where do you find an undertaker typically? In a funeral home. Where do you find an urn? Around dead people. What is a mortgage? Why not call it a house loan? Mortgage. Mort comes from the French word death. Gage, pledge, death pledge. Job. It means a amount of work rendered over time. It also comes from the Hebrew word iyop, meaning persecuted and hated. So you see how mainstream vocabulary is peppered with all kinds of self-destructive programming. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Monday morning is statistically the time of the greatest suicides in the world. So everybody's celebrating their morning, they're celebrating their weekend, and they're going about their weekdays. And we wonder why we have a workforce that looks like a bunch of zombies. Okay, the flaw of attraction. You don't attract what you think about, you attract how thinking about that thing makes you feel. For example, we'll choose money and relationships. If you want more money or a better relationship, but thinking about relationships makes you conjure up your parents' divorce and how hurt you were as a child to watch them separate and you had to share mommy and daddy and go from one house to another, then no, you thinking of relationships is not going to create more happiness with your relationships. Again, if you received some negative programming around money and you want more money, then thinking of money won't simply bring you more money. If you associate money with stress, if you associate money with the feelings of poverty, then what you will create by thinking of money is more poverty. And so you have to actually ask yourself, the things that you want, the main things, when you think about them, how do you feel? When you think of money, how do you feel? When you think of relationships, how do you feel? When you think of health, how do you feel? Okay, priming. There is an area in your brain called the reticular activating system that you train to focus on different things. I'll explain more about that in a moment. Can you look around, please, and count how many things you can see that are brown in color? Okay, great. Eyes on me. Now, without looking anywhere, please tell me how many blue things you just saw. See, for most of us, when you focus on one thing, you can't focus on something else. So if you're looking for brown, you're not noticing blue. In fact, you've probably, how many of you, be honest, saw something that was maybe a little beige, a little orange, and you thought that you'd say it's brown just because it'll make you feel more successful, like you just achieved that task? Yes? That is the proof that you are not your body. You are the conscious observer. You are the witnessing presence inhabiting a body. That is why you can hear without your ears and you can see without your eyes. And it's important to make that distinction because old paradigm consciousness is to say that we are our thoughts, we are our feelings. So if you have an insane thought 100 years ago, you naturally assume you must be insane. If you have an angry thought, you must be angry. Whereas new consciousness is to be able to create a distance, a separation between your feelings, your thoughts, your story, what happened to you when you were a child, and be able to distance yourself and see that as a story that happened to you and not who you are. Because by creating that distance, you can create the healing that comes with it. Imagine the beliefs you've been carrying for 1.5 years. Or how about the beliefs you've been carrying since childhood? We have 7+ billion people on the planet, yet hardly anyone talks to each other outside of Bali and the Bali Spirit Festival. Why is that? What is a belief you were taught as a child? What? Say it again? Don't talk to strangers. Extrapolate that across all of the nations and you have an entire populace not talking to each other. That is the power of a belief. A belief is a practiced thought that you've attached meaning to. The more meaning you ascribe, the more meaning you assign, the stronger the belief. And practiced beliefs become your truths. So, let's say you have a thought like all the good ones are taken, and you think it over and over and over again until it becomes a belief. Then, you start projecting that energy, and you start feeling like all the good ones are taken, and then for you, it will become a truth. All the good ones will be taken because you will not be a vibrational match to the good ones. Does that make sense? So you literally create your own truth through your beliefs. And that actually hardwires neurons together. You create neural circuits in your brain that are physical matter based on your beliefs. And scientifically speaking, it's known as sprouting. And when you stop holding a belief, and you choose to turn your observation away from it, they begin to slowly prune apart. And that's also the scientific term for it. Because your subconscious mind is far, far, far more intelligent and powerful than you are. Think about it. It regulates your heart rate. It keeps you breathing in your sleep. It regulates your hormones and enzymes and all of that beyond your awareness. If you were actually in control of your body, we'd all be dead within seconds. Truthfully. We can't, driving a car is hard enough. Imagine controlling a body. That's why it's left to a greater mind. And what you need to do is allow this greater mind side of you to handle the manifestation for you. And what your conscious mind does is it focuses on what you want and why you want it. Great, so that was me about 11 years ago.
That is not you.
Well, it isn't me, technically. It's more like a past life. See, I believe in reincarnation, but I think you don't have to wait till you die in order to get there. So that was an older version of me. So that was 11 years ago, and you can see how happy and buzzed I look. You see that radiance just spilling out of my purple uniform. And I used to work in the UK. I graduated with a degree and a master's in 3D animation, but I didn't have money, so I thought I'll just increase the hours of my part-time job. My part-time job was selling computers at PC World, which I think is funny because it also stands for politically correct. And that's kind of the world that I was in. And I remember I used to go to work every day and go, I don't want to be here, 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 I don't want to be here. And of course, saying that and thinking that way made me feel like I don't want to be here. That kept me stuck there. For a year and a half, I didn't move. Then my mother said, hey, have you heard of The Secret? So I was like, no, what's that? So I watched The Secret, and then I was like, oh, okay, The Secret is still The Secret, but one thing I know that I'm doing wrong is this saying, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here, is not working for me, clearly. So I changed my password to, I'm leaving soon. So many times a day, I type, Tariq, I'm leaving soon, Tariq, I'm leaving soon, Tariq, I'm leaving soon. After a while, I began to feel like I was leaving soon. Nothing had changed, but I felt like I was leaving soon. Fast forward, I used to go home and play a video game called Assassin's Creed. And I used to see that as a kind of alter ego version of me in the future. And Altair, the character from the first game, has a Christian mother and a Muslim father, so do I. He's born in Syria, I'm born in Jordan. And when he spoke, he sounded exactly like me. I mean, whoever they chose as a voice actor had my register and everything. So it sounded like me, but from the future. So in the game, he takes a leap of faith where he jumps off a roof and trusts that everything's going to be okay. So it's a weird connection to make, I know, but I found myself on top of this roof, looking over the edge, and I vowed to myself that if I could jump off the roof and land okay, I would also quit my job. And I did. I jumped off the roof, I landed, I rolled, because I'd been learning parkour at that point, and I walked into work the next day and resigned. I was on such a high that I felt so different that day. I walked around in my purple uniform feeling like I was already out of there. My energy was already beyond PC World. And a customer got talking to me a few hours later and he said, what do you do? I said, I'm an animator. And he said, well, why are you working here? I said, I quit this morning. He said, are you any good? I said, I'll show you. Logged onto the computer, Tariq, I'm leaving soon, showed him my showreel on YouTube. He hired me on the spot. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, this secret stuff, it works. But they don't tell you that you have to jump first. See, in the movie, they say just sit quietly in a corner and imagine your Ferrari and it'll just show up magically in your driveway. That's not how it works. You have to put something on the line. And when you take a leap of faith, a figurative one, I don't mean go jump off a roof, by the way, but when you take a figurative leap of faith, a proverbial, an emotional step into the unknown, then the universe recognizes that as you have begun the game in motion, and it can now reciprocate in kind. But if you are purely passive, so will it be. How many times does the average adult try something before giving up? You can sit down if you like. Any guesses?
0.
1.
0, 1, 3, 7. Twice. Very close. The average adult will try something a grand total of 3 times before deciding that they are a failure, they're not good enough, they're not smart enough, they're not talented enough. And one thing I spoke about in my talk is that talent is grown, not given. I believe that you can grow any talent, and I've made my life testament to that. You just need to understand the art of practice. Once you know how to practice, you can apply that to any skill and master it. It is just reverse engineering. You take the complex skill, break it down into its component parts, learn the component parts, clump them back together, and you have the complex skill. How many times do you think a child will try something before thinking to themselves, I suck?
103 times.
100? Anyone, come on, shout out numbers. 20, 80, 50, infinite.
Until it succeeded.
Until it succeeds. 300. 300 is the amount of times a child will try something before it decides to give up. Now, who here has children? Okay, children old enough to walk? Yeah, okay. When they were learning how to walk, after they tried a couple of times, you'd be like, you suck at this, just crawl on your belly. You're clearly not meant to be upright. Just slither on the ground. No? How many times would you be willing to see your child fall until it walks? How many times? Until it walks. Right? Yet we are so harsh on ourselves, and realize whenever you are cultivating a new skill, you are an infant in that skill. And if you cut yourself off before trying something 300 times, you are not giving yourself a chance to reveal how talented you really are.